Hi muckers, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're all doing very well. Today, again, we are joined by Denise, who's currently, sorry, I just woke her up by being obnoxiously loud, but we are joined again today by Denise, who is the cat that is living at the Airbnb that I'm currently staying at in Brighton before I move into my place in a couple days. Denise and Rodrigo, they are brother and sister. There is a cat flap in this apartment and the cats just come and go. However, me and Denise have had a really strong bond and she has been enjoying just lounging with me and Rodrigo. I've probably seen him for about 20 minutes since I moved into this Airbnb yesterday. So anyways, I'm glad that we're joined by Denise again, and all the comments were absolutely loving her. So she's enjoying her little rest, but I hope you're all doing well. I'm really excited for today's video. This has been one that I have been wanting to film for a very long time. If you know anything about me and what I've been talking about on my channel recently, whenever I was traveling around America, I was in airports a lot, I was in airplanes a lot, and I was basically just traveling and I had a lot of free time. And what I did with that was kind of deep dived or researched or just wrote things in my notes app that I really would eventually love to film a video on. And today's one is one that I have been waiting for so long because I find it so interesting. And I don't see that many Taylor Swift fans or people who are in pop culture talking about it enough. But basically, I am a huge Swiftie. Judge me all you want, but why are you hating me for just enjoying my interests? Please, shut the fuck up. It really bothers me whenever people automatically start hating on people when they say the person they're a fan of. Yes, I'm a Swiftie, and yes, I went to the Eras tour, and yes, I have every Taylor album. I don't buy multiple versions of it though. That's some people's journeys, but it's not part of my journey. Taylor Swift's fucking capitalist ass will not get me in that retrospect. But I do love listening to the music, and I love the tours. So I would say that I'm more so a casual fan of Taylor Swift. I don't really care for Easter eggs. I really don't care for diving into lore. I love the music. I think she's a great songwriter. I think the albums are great. I have my favorites over other ones. Obviously, I went to the Eras tour multiple times. Hello, Denise. Good morning. It's like midnight. I have my favorites, but I would definitely say that I'm more so on the casual side of Taylor Swift fans, just because I don't want to class myself solely as a Swiftie because I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of flack for this video for maybe having wrong takes or maybe getting things wrong or whatever. So all I'm saying is lay off me a little bit, okay? But what I want to talk about today is how Taylor Swift, in my opinion, was on the trajectory of a Vegas residency, honestly, and probably without the pandemic or without the rebrand that she did in such a clever way, Taylor Swift, as we know her now, would not be one of the biggest pop artists or artists of all time. I think, if anything, she would have had a very sad decline in her career. And I want to talk about everything and everything considered. And you can give me your thoughts, okay? But be nice in the comments, Swifties. Don't piss me off. Okay. So basically what I had written was how Taylor Swift had rebuilt her career after and during the pandemic, and how this completely changed the trajectory of Taylor Swift becoming the artist of, the artist that is at the peak of everything. You know what I mean? So, in 2019, Taylor Swift was releasing her album Lover, and it was a pastel rebrand, if you will, but the album really didn't land in the grand scheme of things. It sold a lot, but it was a real big turning point in her career, and even as a Taylor Swift fan, when I watched those performances back, she was a performance or two away from a Vegas residency, which in most people's eyes is kind of the thing you do to get quick money when your career is kind of on the out. Now, Britney did revamp Vegas residencies. I'm not saying they're all like that, but Taylor was definitely on her way there. So anyways, I want to talk about from 2019 was a really big pivotal moment because it was right before the pandemic when Taylor rebranded. So that's kind of the standing that we're at, but I want to take you on a journey first. Okay, let's dive into it. So 2017 was when the Reputation era started. Now, this was a very dark era, and it was in direct response to the Kim Kardashian, Kanye West situation. And this was coming after Taylor Swift having huge hate trains and being very disliked, and it being very popular to dislike Taylor Swift. I think that this album was a really clever album for the time. It was definitely ahead of its time. I think Reputation is such an incredible album in general. I will say though that the reputation or the reputation of Reputation was a little bit split when it came to reviews. It was praised by fans for its production, number one, and also for it being a direct response to the drama and hearing Taylor's side. But there was a lot of criticism that I was finding on the album being very like self-image oriented and kind of being more so obsessive with your image, which I think is just people reading it wrong. And I think people were taking irony as something way more serious than what it was. But there definitely was a very mixed response to this album. It sold really well. It was huge sales and an incredible comeback. And I would definitely call it a comeback. I think people in the pop world really call anything a comeback these days, but Reputation to me really was. People were very, very, very much so anticipating it. She rebranded with the snake in the intro video, and this is what Kim Kardashian was calling her. And then in 2019 was whenever Lover was released, and this was the follow-up to Reputation. So here's when things really started to take a decline for Taylor, and if she had not rebranded after this, I really think that the follow-up album would have started to affect her longevity. She returned to this colorful pop, and the lead single, Me, was like an absolute disaster. It was, hey kids, spelling is fun. It was way too upbeat, way too cheesy, felt like 10 years stepping back with Brendan Urie, I think, from Panic at the Disco. The song was cringy. It felt like a slap in the face to the fans because it was like Taylor giving more mature music, and then we've gone back to like kids pop. It was a flop. It was a hit that it would never have been a hit. The thing with Lover that's really interesting is it had huge sales. The singles had huge sales and the album had huge sales. This is because Taylor Swift, has a cult following, but really the public reaction to this album was not the greatest. It didn't have that single that did well or that the public really resonated with. And this was a problem for Taylor because she always had that with her albums. Now, what's really interesting is while this album in the moment wasn't reacted to the best by the general public and reviewers, years later on the Eras tour, Cruel Summer, one of the greatest songs of all time, ended up becoming this smash #1 hit while Taylor was on the Eras tour years after the album was released. So this is what's really interesting about Lover is the album really wasn't reacted to that well by the general public and, music critics. But years later, the album did stand the test of time because it ended up getting a #1 single, 5 years after it was released. So I do believe that there's a lot of Taylor music that kind of ages better and maybe ages worse than others. But the album just didn't click with the public. And it also didn't click with a lot of Taylor fans. And I was able to find on multiple different forums, Taylor fans leaving big, I'm leaving the Swiftie fandom, which, by the way, if you're announcing that you're leaving a fandom, you're a fucking loser. Jesus Christ, no one cares about you like that. So Lover was released, I think mid-year, and then in 2019 as well, I think it was 2019, yeah, I think it was 2019, Scooter Braun, let's talk about Scooter Braun. So Scooter Braun ended up buying Big Machine Records for $300 million, which meant that he gained ownership of Taylor's albums. He gained of all of the albums up until Lover. And Taylor was saying that she was blindsided by this happening, that she had no say in the deal, and she posted a huge Tumblr essay basically calling it her biggest nightmare and talking about her work basically being stolen and not hers anymore. Now, what was really interesting about this was when it was initially talked about that Scooter Braun had done this, the celebrity reaction was definitely mixed. I feel like people are misremembering, but celebrities were definitely taking sides. We had people like Halsey supporting Taylor, and we had people like Demi Lovato and Justin Bieber more so on the side of Scooter Braun as he was their clients. And it was very messy when this news originally dropped. People really do think that when Taylor did this full re-recordings that all of the, mainstream and all of the celebrities were on her side, but it really wasn't at the start because people were still defending Scooter Braun or just under his management and couldn't say anything against him, which is what Scooter really relied on as well. And then things started escalating whenever Taylor announced that she actually couldn't perform her old songs at the AMAs when she was going to be doing a performance, or she couldn't use them in her Netflix documentary, Miss Americana. And the public at this standpoint really started to support Taylor, like in the masses. When Taylor announced that she was no longer properly able to perform her old music anymore, I think it was a no-brainer that people were supporting her, and people really turned against Scooter Braun. And I would say even more casual people who were just kind of listening to this situation kind of got more involved in wanting to support Taylor, and it was a real big turning point. So there were huge trends on Twitter, like "We love you, Taylor," "I stand with Taylor," "Give Taylor her music back." These were all going viral on the daily. And I would say that, you know, even non-fans were also supporting her during this time. And Taylor became someone that was, in the general public standpoint, a well-liked person because people wanted to support her, because Taylor now kind of had like an underdog story. You know, she is this massive, massive, massive successful, you know, artist, and she'd been around for so long, but now people kind of liked that she had like an underdog story to support her. So this was a real big turning point, specifically after Lover. You know, it sold really well. I'm not saying that it didn't sell really well, but it didn't really have an impact. But now Taylor had kind of gotten all of the general public to really bat for her in a way that maybe someone who just would hear an album come out would care about or would not care about. Like, people cared about Taylor now and the journey of supporting her, and in the process ended up rediscovering music and listening to her new music to support her, and it was a real big turning point for her. Now, I would say that this ramped up even more when Taylor announced that she was going to re-record all of the stolen albums, and then there was an incentive for people to support the old music whenever it would be republished again. So as these re-recordings of the albums were being published, we were getting OG fans who are huge Swifties, you know, listening to the music again and supporting it and re-falling in love with it, new fans listening to the old music for the first time re-recorded and falling in love with it, and the general public being aware of old music that she's made. It was the perfect storm of everyone having their eyes on her music at first and foremost, and it really kind of solidified her as an artist, and a lot of people really started to take her very seriously in the mainstream. And I think that this was the perfect mix for Taylor completely rebranding in the pandemic. But I don't want to jump ahead because I think it's really important to take it step by step. So again, moving on, she announced that she was going to record all of the albums, which again was a big fuck you to Big Machine and Scooter Braun, and people loved this. And so even the OG fans stopped listening to all of her old music because they wanted to wait for the re-recording. So Scooter Braun and Big Machine had bought all this music, but no one's streaming or buying it anymore, and it was genius of Taylor because she was basically getting to release the same album twice and make double the money on it, triple the money, because people were more wanting to support her now. And she would put vault tracks, which I have my theories on whether they were actually vault tracks, some of them are not. Some of them seem a little bit too tongue-in-cheek for them to actually be songs she wrote back then. I feel like some of them were just recent songs she added on. She would, you know, do this mission where, as a motive for you to buy the albums that she's re-recording that you've already probably bought, she's going to put songs that she recorded that didn't make it onto those albums that she's now re-recorded, and they will be on the albums. There's an incentive to buy it. Very, very, very clever. And then, you know, the theories about what's the song's going to be, and it was a perfect storm of getting your fans involved and also being excited to support it because they're getting new music at the end of the day as well. The only reason that I think that there's some songs from the re-recordings that are really great, and I think that there's some that are total flops. I think the big issue for me is that we're sold this narrative that they were songs from those eras, which I do believe for the most part, but then they have Jack Antonoff production on them, and they sound like songs from Midnights. Like, I would have loved the songs to have been worked with the original people that produced them. So anyways, it was a big cultural moment to now support Taylor, and also it became a big conversation around supporting artists having control of their own music, and Taylor was kind of the person leading this. Now, Scooter ended up selling the masters to Shamrock Holdings, and Taylor was basically saying that she didn't have a chance to buy them back. And then she kind of pushed harder from this point on to the re-recordings project, and people were like at their peak of supporting her as an artist now because they wanted to basically just support her, which was great. Now, I would say that it's interesting to note that I'm kind of going on a tangent here about the re-recordings and how this really helped Taylor's career post-Lover, as we're seeing, like, the album was kind of stagnant to the general public, but now there was this huge interest to support Taylor's previous music and support her recent one. I try not to go too off topic because I want to focus on how the pandemic and the rebrand really did it. There's a lot of things considered as to how Taylor became the biggest artist of all time, and it was all due to these many situations and the smart rebrand. So, obviously, she started releasing the Taylor versions, and then Taylor version became a huge thing as well. She was trademarking it. And as she was releasing these songs and these re-recordings, they were going to number one. They were getting bigger peaks and bigger sales than what they were getting in the moment. And it was just, it was incredible to see. It was incredible to see. Now, again, she would have these unreleased vault tracks. They would then chart. It was insane. It was a total fuck you to Scooter Braun, and I love the pettiness of it. So, here is what I truly think saved Taylor Swift's career. We went on a little tangent there about the re-recordings and all because I think it's very important. I think that Taylor Swift's rebrand during the pandemic was the thing that saved her from the general public going stagnant on her. You know, Reputation, there was an oversaturation of Taylor Swift. The same reason that Taylor Swift is very quiet now is because she was incredibly oversaturated during the Eras tour. She was in every news publication. We were seeing her every weekend. Everyone was talking about Taylor Swift. For an artist to really maintain that public interest, you kind of have to go away at sometimes. You can't always be in their face. And with Reputation, people started to get a little bit, general public, were starting to get a little bit sick of Taylor and the constant drama that Kim and Kanye were mainly fueling, by the way. That when Lover came out, it was really that turning point of what would the next album look like. Now, the next album was one of the most genius fucking rebrands of all time. So obviously, during the pandemic, a lot changed in the music industry and a lot of pre-organized concerts started to get cancelled. Now, Taylor Swift was one of these people that had a pre-planned concert. It was actually called Loverfest. Now, this got cancelled, and I think Loverfest getting cancelled was one of the greatest things that could have ever happened for Taylor's career. It was, going to be like this little festival concert that was going to be supporting the album, and I truly think that it's for the best that this didn't happen. I think that Taylor's career soared because of it. We're seeing, her do certain size venues, a certain amount of shows, and then compared to the Eras tour a couple years later, and she's, the billions upon billions upon billions in ticket sales, you know what I mean, with the clever rebrand. So during COVID, whenever it really started happening, we started seeing artists cancel everything and really go quiet. And few artists really took advantage of the pandemic. I think the two people that come to mind are Taylor and Beyonce. Beyonce completely recorded the 3-project thing that she's currently in with Renaissance, Cowboy Carter, and then the third one. She recorded all of that during the pandemic in those 2-3 years and now is able to release them over the years. And it's just like Taylor did this as well. And it was just such a clever thing to work whenever everyone else took a pause, because then you're able to come back whenever everyone else is starting to work. And it really is a testament to Taylor's work ethic and also Beyonce's work ethic. And this is why both of them are the top artists of all time. So Taylor started working, she kind of retreated from the public and started working with Aaron and Jack Antonoff, and also her then fiance as well, Joe. And then Folklore ended up surprise dropping in 2020 during the pandemic, and Folklore was completely a 180 from Lover. It was a stripped back album. You'll probably have heard the album. Folklore to me is perfection. It is truly one of the greatest albums of all time. And not only do I think the music is incredible, I think that I have such a parasocial to the album because I relied on it so much during the pandemic and I associate it with those times. The album was stripped back. It was kind of DIY core for the grand scheme of things. And it was a laid-back, softer version of Taylor, completely different than the colorful pop of Lover that some people in the general public and critics were starting to get a little bit tired of. It was clever. It was smart. And it was also during the time when indie music was really starting to boom. Indie alternative, kind of like queer music from queer artists was really soaring. I'm not saying Taylor's a queer artist, by the way, but... And don't you start with the Gaylor stuff in my comment section. But anyways, it was when this music was really, this folky kind of music was taking off. And Taylor really created a niche within that for herself. And this album in my opinion, is her greatest album of all fucking time. I cannot sing the praises of this album. I listen to it every single day. It had no promo, it had no tour, and it had truly no real lead single. It just dropped. It was an announcement, and then it dropped. And I think that it's very hard for an artist to pull off a surprise drop. I think the only successful story I've seen of this, other than Taylor, truly is Beyonce with Self-Titled. A surprise drop is risky as fuck. But I think that Taylor knew what she was doing with she needed to do something so much more drastically different than Lover and Reputation, of announcing an album months before it comes out and the public kind of being over the era by the time the music comes out. I hate when an artist, and it's always the record company that do this, will announce an album in January and the album comes out next year or something like that. People are tired by it. People move quick. And the fact that Taylor was able to jump on this, the album comes out, and people had no real time to digest that the album came out before they're digesting the music, was such a smart decision that was completely different than everything else she did. And I do think that she did it for that reason as well. And it changed everything. It got Taylor more fans, new fans, got the old fans more into it. So people are now, so obsessed with this music. And it's like this, with all the re-recordings, it was a perfect storm of creating parasocial with fans, which Taylor has always had because she was always interacting with fans on social media. So she was invite them to their house for listening parties and stuff. Like, Taylor's always had that. And the intimacy of listening to music during the pandemic, because that's all really a lot of people had. It was a smart decision on Taylor's behalf. Now, what was even more clever was also this album was her biggest rated album of her career. It was 88 on Metacritic. So the music as well was good. It was good as fuck. And then only a couple months later, she surprise dropped Evermore. Also an incredible album. Top 3 for me of Taylor Swift. This was a, companion album. It had incredible collabs on it. Champagne Problems, one of her best songs of her entire fucking career, by the way. And again, this same thing. No real promo, no real lead single. And people loved it with Folklore, and it worked with Evermore again, because we were still in that time that was very isolating, and Taylor became such a comfort person for a lot of people. So whenever we, really leave, when I'm saying leave, the pandemic is in terms of lockdowns are lifted, when we kind of leave that time and Taylor is in the midst of having this insane, bond with her fans again, which is incredibly parasocial. It's the fans to her. They don't know she exists. She's re-recording and re-releasing music. People are now obsessed with this new music she's making and then being exposed to her old music, and it created so many die-hard fans that wouldn't have been there if she had continued on the trajectory of Reputation, promo, then the album, Lover announcement, promo, then the album. Like, that was... If you look at performances of Taylor or look at the demand for Taylor in 2019, it is significantly different than Taylor Swift in 2023 with the Eras tour. And I believe that it was all intentional, honestly. So Folklore ended up winning Grammy of the Year, and Taylor ended up becoming the first woman to win Artist of the Year 3 times. Now, I think as well, during this time, Taylor was again dropping the re-records. And this was just, it was constant things for people to digest. She was constantly giving people music. She was constantly giving things for people to talk about, which again worked really well in the lead up to the Eras tour. And again, it was a little bit oversaturating in the end, which is why she is now on, a prolonged break. And I hope she enjoys it. She worked so fucking hard for a good couple years, back to back to back. Now, I think Red, Taylor's version dropping, was a real big turning point as well for her fans and the general public being on her side. She released the 10-minute version of All Too Well, and All Too Well is one of her greatest songs anyway, but the 10-minute version is truly one of her probably top 5 songs of her entire career. This was a huge moment for the fans getting involved with theories and being able to link dates and timelines. And she ended up accompanying this with a short film as well, which again, people really supported and rallied behind. And they were now seeing her as someone who really respects and is dedicated to her art. And I think Red was a big turning point of really getting people parasocially involved. She was breaking Spotify records like never seen before, and the short film was absolutely trending. People were loving it. People were eating it up. in 2022, I think it was, Midnights was released, another brand new album. And this one definitely had a more, kind of Reputation and Lover-esque release of being announced and then the countdown or whatever. Because Taylor was now selling so much music that obviously her and her team wanted an announcement period to kind of get enough sales for the first week so that she could break records, which is what they did. But the public were now on board for another kind of Lover release or Reputation release because she had given them so many surprise drops and she had really gotten people involved again, that she kind of wasn't in this stale position with the general public as she was with Lover, that she was now just, it was such an insane, the public really, really, really got on board with it. And I don't blame them because the music's all good as fuck. And then March 2023, the Eras Tour begins. It was selling out like fuck. Billions of dollars generated. We were seeing cities across the world literally being funded by the Eras Tour. Like they were getting, their infrastructures were generating so much fucking money. Hotels were booming. Like the systems, the cities were profiting so much off of Taylor Swift, and she was becoming just this unstoppable, untouchable fucking #1 artist. Which is just so crazy to think that only a couple years prior to that, people were writing Taylor Swift off. The general public were really tired of being overexposed to her. But the Eras Tour, people wanted to be overexposed to her because of everything we just talked about. And it's just, honestly, it's brilliant. It really is brilliant. The Eras Tour concert film ended up coming out, and it was the highest grossing concert film ever. I just think that Taylor was able to, I think she was able to acknowledge that people were getting a little bit tired of her with the Lover. I think the Scooter thing happening, as unfortunate as it was, really kind of changed the trajectory of her career. I think the way she handled that professionally as well was very good for her career and the general public being on her side. I think the re-recordings was absolutely genius to expose everyone to your music who may or may not have heard it before. Absolutely brilliant. Surprise dropping Folklore and Evermore during the pandemic. One of the most brilliant music decisions of all fucking time. Doing the Eras Tour, where the tour is going to be going through all of your eras, so people don't even just need to like Folklore, they can come to everything. Brilliant. Oh my god, the rebrand of Taylor Swift into this just Taylor Swift the brand. It went from Taylor Swift the artist, she's still the artist, but Taylor Swift the brand, the empire, the #1 artist. It was all very strategic in my eyes. It was all very calculated, but my god, her and her team did a good fucking job with it. I think that's all the notes that I have. Yeah, I honestly am saying that I do believe that Loverfest would have essentially flopped. I think that her next era would have done significantly worse than Lover, and I think that if she was to release albums at the rate that she was doing, post Folklore, if she was doing that during the Lover, I think that ultimately her sales would have tanked and it would have just been her diehard fans liking her, and I think that we would have seen a Vegas residency, which again is but I'm so glad that things went the way they did. I'm so glad she was now able to buy back her music. I think that Folklore, incredible. Evermore, incredible. The vault tracks for some of the albums, incredible. The way that she rebranded her team during the pandemic is brilliant. Again, I truly believe that without this rebrand, that Taylor Swift, I think that Taylor Swift would have the same kind of career as maybe, I'm trying to think. I honestly I can't think of a person, but I just don't think that she would have been what she is. Please let me know your thoughts. I would love to do a part 2 in this, diving even deeper. Let's talk about it down below, and I'll see you in my next one, and goodbye.